The wind moved roughly across the open wheat fields, bending golden stalks as though nature itself knew something terrible was about to happen. In a quiet farmland county far from the chaos of cities, life was usually slow, predictable, and peaceful. But on this particular evening, dark clouds were rolling in, not just in the skies, but in the hearts of those who lived there. For Maria, a young farm girl with a gentle heart and eyes that reflected both innocence and unshakable courage, the night was supposed to be just another evening of tending to the animals, washing the dust from her hands, and waiting for her husband, Daniel, to call from his shift at the hospital. She had no idea that by sunset she would find herself at the mercy of monsters in her own land. Maria grew up here. The soil beneath her bare feet was the same ground her father had worked, the same place her mother had sung lullabies as she planted seeds of corn. She wasn't afraid of hard work. Her hands were strong from lifting bales of hay, and her skin often burned red from days in the sun. But she was afraid of the men who had started lurking at the edges of her farm for weeks now. Local troublemakers, bitter and cruel, resented the fact that her husband Daniel, once a soldier, now a paramedic who flew emergency medical helicopters, had managed to rise above the poverty of the countryside. Daniel had married Maria, not just for her beauty but for her quiet strength, and together they were building a future. That future sparked envy in the kind of men who fed on hate. That night, Maria was walking back from the barn, carrying a lantern, when she saw them, 5 figures standing near the oak tree by the fence. She froze, her chest tightening. She recognized them immediately: Darren, Cole, Mason, Brent, and Kyle, the kind of men who never grew past their teenage cruelty. They drank in the afternoons, picked fights at the feed store, and laughed at suffering as though it were entertainment. Maria swallowed hard, keeping her lantern raised as though its small light could keep the darkness at bay. Well, look who's out here all alone." Darren's voice carried, mocking and sharp. "Daniel's not around to protect his little farm princess." Maria's grip on the lantern tightened. "Go home. You don't belong here," she said firmly, though her voice shook. But they didn't leave. Instead, they circled closer, shadows moving against the dying light. Mason chuckled. "We told your husband this land doesn't belong to him, or to you. But he doesn't listen. Maybe you will." Before she could react, Brent snatched the lantern from her hand, hurling it to the ground where the flame hissed and went out, leaving them all in near darkness under the looming oak. The last rays of sunset painted their faces in streaks of blood-red light. Maria turned to run, but Kyle caught her arm roughly, dragging her back as she kicked and screamed. "Stop! Let me go!" she cried, her voice echoing across the empty fields. But no one came. The nearest farm was miles away. The sound of the cattle in the barn was drowned by her own pounding heartbeat. The men shoved her toward the oak tree, their laughter chilling against the silence of dusk. Cole tossed a coil of rope onto the ground with a smirk. "Since she wants to act high and mighty, let's show her what happens to people who don't respect us." Her eyes widened, horror filling every inch of her body. "Please, don't do this," she begged, tears brimming. But mercy was not something these men carried in their veins. They worked quickly, tying her wrists, ignoring her struggles. Maria's voice broke, screaming for help into the darkening sky. Darren leaned close, whispering cruelly, "Your husband can save strangers in his helicopter, but he won't be here to save you." Moments later, they hauled her upward. The rough bark of the oak dug into her back as they secured the rope, hoisting her into the treetop like some grotesque trophy. Her breath caught, her body trembling with pain, fear, and the crushing weight of helplessness. The last thing she saw before her tears blurred everything was the men walking away, their laughter echoing like a nightmare. For 47 eternal seconds, Maria swung in the treetop, choking back sobs, fighting with every ounce of strength not to give in to despair. The world spun around her, her lungs burned. She prayed, not for herself but for Daniel. She prayed he would forgive himself for not being there. Then, in the distance, a sound split through the night. At first, faint, like the whir of a giant's wings, but it grew louder, sharper, closer, the unmistakable roar of helicopter blades. Lights cut across the darkness, sweeping the fields, growing brighter until they illuminated the oak where Maria hung. Her heart skipped. Relief crashed through her, because it wasn't just any helicopter. It was Daniel's. The same emergency rescue chopper that had carried countless broken bodies from wreckage and brought hope to dying towns. And now, it was here, descending for her. The men who had left her hadn't gone far, they heard it too. Darren turned, his grin fading into disbelief. No, it can't be him. But it was. The helicopter's searchlight blasted across the treetop, locking on Maria's struggling figure. The massive blades thundered, shaking the branches. Within moments, the side door swung open and Daniel stepped out onto the platform, his headset in place, eyes burning with fury. He had seen many horrors in his life, on the battlefield, in car crashes, in desperate medical rescues, but nothing compared to seeing his wife strung up like prey on their own land. His fists clenched as his voice boomed through the helicopter's external speakers. GTMU Wahar. The men froze like animals caught in a trap, their bravado evaporating under the storm in Daniel's voice. And Maria, barely holding on, felt strength flood back into her veins. Her husband had come. The fight was not over.